Picture this. You're at a bustling dinner party, the kind where the air is thick with laughter, clinking glasses, and the hum of overlapping conversations. The room is warm, lit by the soft glow of chandeliers, and everyone seems to be in high spirits. Everyone except you. You're the one who spent hours helping the host prepare, chopping vegetables, setting the table, making sure every guest had a drink in hand before they even asked. You're the one who stepped in to diffuse a tense argument between two friends, offering a gentle smile and a few kind words to smooth things over. You're the one who gave up your seat to someone else, even though your feet are aching from standing all day. And now, as the night winds down, you're sitting in the corner, watching as everyone else basks in the glow of the evening, laughing, connecting, thriving, while you feel invisible. The host doesn't thank you, the friends you helped don't acknowledge your effort, and the person you gave your seat to doesn't even glance your way. You're left with a hollow feeling in your chest, a quiet ache that whispers, "Why do I always end up here? Why does my kindness always leave me empty, overlooked, and alone? Why do kind people always lose?" Now let's imagine a different scene. You're a child again, standing on a playground, the sun high in the sky, the sound of other kids' laughter ringing in your ears. You've brought your favorite toy to share, a shiny red ball you love more than anything. You offer it to the other kids, hoping they'll include you in their game, hoping they'll see how generous you are, how much you want to be their friend. But instead of gratitude, they snatch the ball, run off, and leave you standing there alone, watching as they play without you. You feel a lump in your throat, a sting in your eyes, but you don't cry. You tell yourself it's okay, that you did the right thing, that being kind is what matters. But deep down, you can't help but wonder, why does being kind always feel like losing? Why does it always leave you on the outside looking in? Let's take a step back and think about this paradox, because that's what it is, a paradox that cuts to the core of what it means to be human. We're taught from a young age that kindness is a virtue, that it's the highest good, that it's what makes us moral, worthy, lovable. Parents, teachers, religious leaders, they all tell us the same thing. Be kind, be generous, put others first, and the world will reward you. But what happens when the world doesn't? What happens when your kindness is met with indifference, exploitation, or even cruelty? What happens when you give everything you have, your time, your energy, your heart, and you're left with nothing but a sense of emptiness, a sense of being used, a sense of being invisible? How many times have you gone out of your way to help someone, only to watch them take your help and walk away without a second thought? How many times have you put others' needs before your own, only to find yourself neglected, overlooked, or taken for granted? How many times have you been the nice one, the good one, only to feel like you're losing at the game of life? Maybe you're thinking right now, I don't want to stop being kind. I believe in kindness. I believe it's the right thing to do. But what if kindness, the very thing you've been taught to value above all else, is also the thing that's holding you back? What if the world isn't built to reward kindness, but to exploit it? What if being kind, in a world that values self-interest, is a losing strategy? To understand why kind people often lose, we need to look deeper, not just at the act of kindness itself, but at the forces that shape how it's received, how it's perceived, and how it impacts the person who gives it. Let's start with Fyodor Dostoevsky, a writer who wrestled with this very question in his novel, The Idiot. The story centers on Prince Mishkin, a man of pure, almost childlike goodness, who enters a world of deceit, greed, and manipulation. Mishkin is kind to a fault. He sees the best in everyone. He forgives endlessly. He gives without expecting anything in return. But what does his kindness get him? He's mocked, betrayed, and ultimately destroyed by the very people he tries to help. Dostoevsky doesn't shy away from the harsh truth. In a world driven by self-interest, kindness can be a liability. Mishkin's goodness makes him a target, a pawn in the games of those who are willing to exploit his generosity for their own gain. Dostoevsky forces us to ask, is kindness a strength or a weakness? Is it a virtue or a curse? What if the very quality that makes us human, our capacity for empathy, for selflessness, for love, is also the quality that makes us vulnerable that sets us up to lose? Let's look at this through another lens. Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophy, which offers a stark contrast to the traditional view of kindness. Nietzsche was deeply skeptical of what he called slave morality, a system of values that glorifies kindness, humility, and self-sacrifice. He argued that these virtues were created by the weak to protect themselves from the strong, to level the playing field by making self-interest seem immoral. In Nietzsche's view, the world operates on the will to power, a fundamental drive to assert oneself, to dominate, to thrive. Kindness in this framework is a form of self-denial, a rejection of the will to power that leaves the kind person at a disadvantage. When you're kind, when you put others first, you're suppressing your own desires, your own needs, your own power. You're giving others the upper hand, allowing them to take while you give, to rise while you fall. Nietzsche would say that kind people lose because they bought into a moral system that's designed to keep them down, a system that rewards selflessness with suffering. What if Nietzsche is right? What if kindness isn't a universal good, but a cultural construct that benefits the selfish at the expense of the selfless? What if the reason you feel like you're always losing is because you're playing by rules that were never meant to let you win? Now let's bring in a psychological perspective to understand why kindness often backfires, because there's a biological and cognitive dimension to this paradox. Our brains are wired for survival, and part of that wiring includes a mechanism called the reciprocity bias. This bias leads us to expect that when we give, others will give back. It's an evolutionary trait that helped our ancestors build cooperative societies. When you're kind to someone, when you go out of your way to help them, your brain expects reciprocity, even if you're not consciously aware of it. You expect gratitude, acknowledgement, or at the very least, a sense of mutual respect. But what happens when that reciprocity doesn't come? What happens when your kindness is met with indifference or, worse, exploitation? Your brain registers this as a betrayal, a violation of the social contract, and it triggers a stress response. Your amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for fear and emotional reactions, lights up, flooding your body with cortisol, the stress hormone. You feel hurt, anxious, betrayed, even if you tell yourself you shouldn't. This isn't just a mental reaction. It's a physical one that leaves you feeling drained, depleted, and vulnerable. What if your brain's own wiring is setting you up to lose, making every act of kindness a gamble that you're likely to regret? But it's not just biology, it's also culture, the way we're conditioned to think about kindness and its role in our lives. We live in a society that glorifies kindness on the surface, but rewards self-interest in practice. Think about the messages we're bombarded with every day. Nice guys finish last. You have to look out for number one. If you don't take what you want, someone else will. These sayings aren't just cliches. They're reflections of a cultural truth, a truth that values competition over cooperation, individualism over community, self-interest over selflessness. In a world that operates on these principles, kindness becomes a liability, a weakness that others can exploit. When you're kind, when you give without expecting anything in return, you're going against the grain of a system that's designed to reward those who take, not those who give. You're playing by a different set of rules that leave you vulnerable, exposed, and often defeated. What if the reason kind people lose isn't because there's something wrong with them, but because there's something wrong with the world they live in? What if the problem isn't your kindness, but the way society has conditioned us to see it? So what happens when kind people lose over and over again? Let's start with the personal level, because this is where the impact hits hardest, where it shapes your life in ways you might not even notice. Every time your kindness is met with indifference, every time you give and get nothing in return, you're not just feeling hurt, you're internalizing a message. You're learning that kindness doesn't pay, that selflessness leads to suffering, that putting others first means putting yourself last. Over time, this message takes root, shaping your beliefs, your behaviors, your entire sense of self. Maybe you start to feel resentful, bitter, angry at the world for not rewarding your goodness, angry at yourself for being too nice. Or maybe you double down on your kindness, hoping that if you just give more, If you just try harder, someone will finally see your worth. Someone will finally give back. But what if that never happens? What if the more you give, the more you lose, until you're left with nothing, no energy, no self-respect, no sense of worth? How many times have you felt used, taken for granted, walked over because you were too kind to say no? How many times have you sacrificed your own needs, your own happiness, your own dreams, because you didn't want to let someone else down? How many times have you watched others succeed, others who weren't afraid to take, to demand, to put themselves first, while you stayed in the background, waiting for a reward that never came? Let's take a closer look at how this plays out in relationships, because kindness doesn't just affect you, it affects the people around you, the ones you love, the ones you care about. When you're a kind person, when you're always giving, always sacrificing, you create a dynamic where others come to expect it. They start to see your kindness as a given, as something they're entitled to, rather than something they need to appreciate. Maybe you have a friend who always calls you when they're in trouble, knowing you'll drop everything to help, but never checks in when you're struggling. Maybe you have a partner who takes your support for granted, never acknowledging the ways you've put their needs before your own. Maybe you have a colleague who takes credit for your work, knowing you're too kind to call them out. Over time, these relationships become one-sided, imbalanced, draining. You give, they take, and you're left feeling empty, unappreciated, unseen. This is what Carl Jung would call a failure to integrate the shadow, the part of yourself you've repressed, the part that knows how to say no, how to set boundaries, how to put yourself first. When you're too kind, when you suppress your own needs in favor of others, you're not just losing, you're losing yourself. How many relationships have you let drain you because you were too kind to walk away? How many times have you let someone take advantage of you because you didn't want to seem selfish? How many times have you given up a piece of yourself to keep someone else happy? But the impact doesn't stop with you. It ripples out into society at large, affecting the way we live as a collective, the way we interact as a culture. We live in a world that's built on competition, on the survival of the fittest, on the idea that you have to take what you want if you're going to get ahead. In this world, kindness is often seen as a weakness, a flaw, a sign that you're not strong enough, not smart enough, not ruthless enough to succeed. Think about the way we celebrate success in our culture. The billionaire who built an empire by stepping on others, the politician who wins by playing dirty, the influencer who gains millions of followers by projecting a perfect, curated image. These are the people we admire, the ones we hold up as models of success, the ones we aspire to be. But what about the kind people, the ones who give without expecting anything in return, the ones who put others first, the ones who live with empathy and compassion? They're often invisible, overlooked, forgotten. They're the ones working behind the scenes, the ones helping others succeed, the ones sacrificing their own dreams so someone else can achieve theirs. And what do they get for it? Nothing, or worse, they get exploited, used, discarded. This cultural bias against kindness creates a vicious cycle. The more kind people lose, the more society reinforces the idea that kindness doesn't pay, that self-interest is the only way to win. What if this cycle is what's keeping us trapped, as individuals and as a society? What if our obsession with competition, with winning, with taking, is what's holding us back from building a world where kindness can thrive? Let's bring neuroscience back into the picture to understand why this feels so inescapable. Because there's a biological reason why kindness often leads to loss. When you're kind, when you give to others, your brain releases oxytocin, the feel-good hormone associated with bonding and trust. This is why kindness feels good in the moment. It creates a sense of connection, a sense of warmth, a sense of purpose. But here's the catch. That same oxytocin release also makes you more vulnerable. It lowers your defenses, making you more likely to trust others, even when they don't deserve it. It makes you more likely to give, even when it's not in your best interest. And when that kindness isn't reciprocated, when it's met with indifference or exploitation, your brain registers it as a betrayal, triggering a stress response. Your amygdala lights up. Your cortisol levels spike, and you're left feeling hurt, anxious, betrayed. Over time, this cycle of giving and losing can lead to what psychologists call compassion fatigue, a state of emotional exhaustion where you feel drained, depleted, unable to give anymore. What if your brain's own wiring is setting you up to lose, making every act of kindness a double-edged sword that feels good in the moment but leaves you vulnerable in the long run? Now let's add another layer. Cognitive biases, the mental shortcuts our brains use to make sense of the world. One of the most powerful biases at play here is the fundamental attribution error, which makes us attribute others' behavior to their character rather than their circumstances. When someone takes advantage of your kindness, when they don't reciprocate, you're likely to blame yourself. You think, I must have done something wrong. I must not be good enough. I must not deserve better. You don't consider that their behavior might be a result of their own issues, their own selfishness, their own inability to appreciate what you've given. This bias makes you internalize the loss, turning it into a reflection of your own worth rather than a reflection of their actions. Another bias at play is the optimism bias, which makes us overestimate the likelihood of positive outcomes. When you're kind, you expect it to be rewarded, you expect gratitude, appreciation, connection, because you believe in the inherent goodness of others. But what if that belief is a trap? What if the optimism bias is setting you up for disappointment, making you give more than you should, more than you can, more than the world is willing to give back? But it's not just your brain, it's also the way society conditions us to think about kindness. The cultural narratives we've been fed since we were children. We're taught to see kindness as a moral imperative, as the ultimate good, as the thing that makes us worthy of love, of respect, of belonging. We're told that if we're kind, if we're good, the world will be kind to us in return. But what if that's a lie? What if the world isn't kind, isn't good, isn't fair? What if the cultural narrative of kindness is a myth, one that keeps us trapped in a cycle of giving and losing, of sacrificing and suffering? Jean-Paul Sartre, the existentialist philosopher, would say that this struggle with kindness is a reflection of our struggle with freedom. Sartre believed that we are radically free, but that freedom comes with a heavy burden. We're free to choose how we act, how we live, how we relate to others. But most of us don't want that responsibility. When you're kind, when you give without expecting anything in return, you're exercising your freedom, but you're also exposing yourself to the freedom of others, the freedom they have to take, to exploit, to ignore. Sartre would say that kind people lose because they're caught in a paradox of freedom. They're free to give, but they're not free from the consequences of others' choices. What if the reason you keep losing isn't because you're too kind, but because you haven't learned how to navigate the freedom of others? Let's bring this back to a personal level with a story, because I've been where you are, and I know how heavy this burden can feel. A few years ago, I found myself in a situation that felt all too familiar. I had a friend, let's call her Sarah, who was going through a rough time. She'd just lost her job, her relationship was falling apart, and she was struggling with her mental health. I wanted to be there for her, to be the kind of friend I'd always prided myself on being, so I gave everything I had. I spent hours on the phone with her, listening to her vent, offering advice, trying to lift her spirits. I drove across town to bring her groceries when she couldn't afford them. I helped her update her resume. I even lent her money to cover her rent. I put my own life on hold, my work, my relationships, my own struggles, to be there for her. I told myself I was doing the right thing, that this was what kindness looked like, that this was what friendship meant. But what did I get in return? Nothing. Sarah never thanked me, never acknowledged the sacrifices I'd made, never asked how I was doing. And when she finally got back on her feet, when she landed a new job and started dating someone new, she disappeared. She stopped calling, stopped texting, stopped checking in. I was left feeling used, empty, betrayed. I'd given so much of myself, and I had nothing to show for it. I started to resent her, to resent myself, to resent the very idea of kindness. I thought, why do I keep doing this? Why do I keep giving when all it does is leave me with nothing? That experience was a turning point for me because it forced me to confront a hard truth. Kindness on its own isn't enough. It's not enough to give without expecting anything in return, to sacrifice without setting boundaries, to put others first without putting yourself first too. I realized that I'd been so focused on being kind that I'd forgotten to be kind to myself. I'd suppressed my own needs, my own desires, my own shadow, in the name of goodness. Jung would say that this was my failure to integrate my shadow, the part of myself that knows how to say no, how to set limits, how to prioritize my own well-being. By ignoring that part of myself, I'd set myself up to lose, over and over again. But that experience also taught me something else. Kindness doesn't have to be a losing strategy. It can be a strength, a gift, a source of connection. If you learn how to balance it with self-respect, with boundaries, with an understanding of the world you're living in. So how do you stop losing as a kind person? How do you break free from this cycle of giving and suffering, of sacrificing and losing? It starts with a shift in perspective, a shift in how you see kindness and its role in your life. First, you need to integrate your shadow, as Jung would say. You need to acknowledge the part of yourself that's been suppressed, the part that knows how to say no, how to set boundaries, how to put yourself first. This doesn't mean you stop being kind. It means you start being kind to yourself too. The next time someone asks for your help, before you say yes, ask yourself, can I do this without sacrificing my own well-being? Am I giving from a place of abundance, or am I giving from a place of depletion? If the answer is the latter, it's okay to say no. It's okay to prioritize yourself. It's okay to set boundaries. Second, you need to reframe your expectations. The reciprocity bias makes us expect gratitude, appreciation, connection when we're kind. But the reality is that not everyone will give that to you. Not everyone will appreciate your kindness. Not everyone will reciprocate. Not everyone will see your worth. And that's okay. You can't control how others respond to your kindness, but you can control why you're kind in the first place. Be kind because it aligns with your values, because it makes you feel good, because it's who you are, not because you expect something in return. When you let go of that expectation, you take away the power others have to hurt you, to make you feel like you've lost. Finally, let's talk about the bigger picture, because this isn't just about you, it's about all of us. If we as individuals can learn to balance kindness with self-respect, imagine what that could do for our society. Imagine a world where kindness isn't a liability, but a strength. A world where we give without losing, where we help without sacrificing, where we build each other up instead of tearing each other down. Imagine a world where we value cooperation over competition, community over individualism, empathy over self-interest. It starts with you, with me, with each of us choosing to be kind in a way that doesn't leave us empty, in a way that doesn't let us lose. So here's my challenge to you. The next time you're tempted to give more than you can, to sacrifice more than you should, stop. Take a moment to check in with yourself. Ask yourself, am I being kind to myself too? Am I setting boundaries? Am I giving from a place of strength or a place of weakness? And then share your story. If this resonates with you, if you've ever felt like your kindness has made you lose, let me know in the comments. Tell me about a time when you gave too much, when you sacrificed too much, when you felt like you lost because you were too kind. Let's start a conversation. Let's learn from each other. Let's find a way to be kind without losing ourselves in the process. Until next time, be kind. But don't forget to be kind to yourself first.